All right, we're back, and it is officially 2 weeks until the NFL draft. So, figured that we'll put the mock drafts on pause for a little bit and get into maybe why we're drafting certain guys in certain areas in the terms of our order of these prospects. I want to split it into a few episodes, and we're starting today with the fun ones at the skill positions, those being quarterback, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. We were talking a little bit before we started recording about how, especially the running back class, we feel like it's a little bit overlooked. There's not the Bijan Robinson type. There's not the super elite running back in this class, but there's a lot of quality depth. And I think talking about the order, especially of that position, will be very, very fun. But we can start with chalk of our number one quarterback. And mine, Danny, is Caleb Williams. It really has been the whole time. When I watched him play, it really is unlike any other quarterback that I've watched since I've started doing this type of pre-draft stuff. And the fact that he plays like a shortstop, that's the first thing that came to my mind. He doesn't play. It doesn't look like a football player. It is, obviously, and he processes like a football player, and he plays the position like you'd want a quarterback to, but then he'll jump off 1 foot. That throw against the UCLA game sticks out to me the most, where he slides up, jumps off 1 foot, and delivers a dart down the sideline. He's been my favorite. I think he's in a tier of his own in this quarterback class, and he'll go number one overall, and I feel like that's all I need to say on him.
Yeah, I wish I could sit here and say something different, but I agree with you. Dude is just... He's gifted, and I think that's the biggest thing. I think when you're compared to someone like Patrick Mahomes, that's quite the honor, and I think he deserves it. I think a lot of people hate on him for his off-the-field stuff. Painted fingernails, crying after games, stuff like that. I know I knock him a little bit just for personality type things. There is something to be said. I think his only true lacking thing, and I can't speak to this personally, it's just from observation and complete from the stands, is leadership. I don't know that I want the guy leading my team to be bawling in the stands after a loss. I get games are emotional, and I've cried after high school games, and that's probably more pathetic. But at the same time, I did it in our locker room or in a huddle after or in a private setting and not in the middle of the stand in front of everyone. I could care less what he does. I don't judge people for what they do. It's just one of those things where, unfortunately, he's in the world die, and he's out there painting his fingernails with pink phone cases, crying after games. He's going to get criticized for it. It's how the world works. When you are the possible 101, everything you're going to do is going to be overanalyzed. But regardless of all that, he is probably the most talented player in this draft, aside from maybe one other wide receiver. But aside from that, he's pretty strong. He's got great instincts, great improv. Needs to stay on script a little bit more, but that's really the only thing. So since you went one first, and we agree on.
Well, I wanted to comment real quick on the off the field stuff. I don't knock him too much for it. I think the other side of the coin is that you want. The quarterback who has the kind of quirky personality and isn't afraid to completely be theirself. I think there's a positive in that as well. I think there's a lot of, especially in an NFL locker room where everyone around you is a grown man, right? These aren't kids anymore. I think that in just anybody's adult life, the people that you find as genuine and as, somebody that you don't mind being around are the people that are just authentic and true to themselves, and they're not trying to be anybody else. So I think I think I'm maybe the flip side, but I think that'll ultimately help him as he tries to gain the trust of the locker room. And we'll see what happens with any of it. There are quirky, eclectic guys in the NFL right now. Aaron Rodgers is over the top, but he's always been that way since he came out of Cal. And we see that he obviously had a Hall of Fame career. Any football player really, all of these guys are weirdos. They're all psychos. For sure. They crave, killing people on the football field. There has to be this killer mentality, I don't think a weird edge hurts anybody at athlete, but I'll let you carry on with number 2.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, oh, this is a huge knock against him. He's not going to be good. No, it's just one of those things where when someone is as good as he is, you've got to find some kind of thing to pick on. Unfortunately,
Sure, yeah, and people look any way they can.
Exactly, and so you choose that thing, and to me, like, I do differ a little bit. When I look at someone Tom Brady is like the perfect. Obviously, I idolize him, whatever. But he's what I think of as a leader. He's very calm, cool, composed. Like, you aren't going to see anything crazy out of him outside of the locker room, and who knows what happens in there. My favorite quarterback, Justin Herbert, speaks entirely in movie quotes and anime references. He's a geek. I love it. That's part of why I love it. So 100%, it's definitely going to be just one person's flavor and one person's not. So,
and from the outside looking in, one of the things that we don't get, like, we can watch all the film and we can see all the stories, and we're given whatever reporters give us, and we watch him hug his mom in the stands and cry after games, and we can build our own opinions off that, but we don't have access to the meetings that they're doing, all these pre-draft meetings, and I'm sure that these leadership traits and things are I'm not sure, I'm confident, I'm 100% sure of these things being hashed out in these meetings that we don't get access to. So we are certainly on the outside looking in, and Ryan Poles is figuring that stuff out. So we'll see how it all looks. That's the fun part about all this, is we have no idea how any of it will look years from now.
100%. So then my number 2, it's been changing this whole process. I think for a lot of people it has. I think the Washington Commanders have decided on a guy, from what it sounds like, from what we can believe from that. But my actual number 2 quarterback is going to be Drake May. So a little different than what might happen in the draft. But for me, I've seen a lot from Daniels that I'm okay moving him down, moving May up. May's arm talent alone puts him first round, top 10 conversation easy, and then everything else just is kind of bona fide extra. Stays light on his feet. He's got a great flick. Has speed. Has that kind of physicality to move out of the pocket and scramble. Capable of impressive out of structure accuracy. So he's great on the move. He's experienced passer. His main knock is his maturity, and not personal, but on the field. Mm-hmm. He makes stupid mistakes, and sometimes that's being inaccurate or just not making the read, which are 2 huge things. Definitely some worrying things. But I will say he's my QB2 in this class. However, I think the best case scenario for him is sitting for a year to learn those things. I think that would make it to where he is the second best quarterback in this draft at the end. I think if he's put out there in the immediate start, I definitely think there's going to be an easy argument that he wasn't the second best if he develops bad habits and keeps these bad habits going. But if he can sit behind an experienced vet, learn from them, gain from them, kind of knock this silly stuff off and use his talent to create good habits, good reads, stuff like that, I think he can definitely be in that conversation with Caleb. I love him just for his raw potential, but that is raw, and it definitely needs some work on him.
Yeah, I've got Drake May as 2 as well, and then I have a gap between any other quarterback in this class in terms of Caleb and May, and then like a jump. But May, as you said, saying all the right things, an athlete, a good runner, a guy who kind of surprised me as a runner, really. Not afraid to lower the shoulder, which isn't always a good thing. We saw that with Anthony Richardson this past year, where good thrower of the football, has a bomb of an arm, absolute cannon, can throw the deep ball well. He does struggle. There are mechanical things, especially in his feet, and obviously everything, like you said, everything's going to be nitpicked when a player is supposed to be drafted as highly as he is. But with the mechanics, I remind myself that he'll be 22 years old. He'll be turning 22 right before the start of next year. I think that anybody could benefit from sitting a year, like you said, and cleaning some stuff up. I am also a fan of the throw him to the wolves, especially at the quarterback position. You're going to know right away if you've got a guy or not. It's started to trend that way over recent years. I think that he's got ideal size, ideal arm, can run, does crazy stuff. I see a lot of Josh Allen comps. I see a lot of Justin Herbert comps. Obviously, the size and the arm talent. I like Jordan Love as a comp. Just kind of not necessarily a sneaky runner, but somebody who is very capable of running the football. And Jordan Love, very creative, just like May. Well, they'll roll out left. Edge rusher beats the tackle. They start to get wrapped up. They flip the ball to the left hand and then flick it for a touchdown. May did that. I forget exactly what game it was. But yeah, he's my QB2. Uber talented, has all the counting specifications you want in a quarterback. It'll absolutely about cleaning up those mechanics though, and he's got time to do it. So I'm excited to see where he lands. As with all of these guys, system matters. But I'm high on Drake May.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the nose. I mean, I think my favorite comp for him is Josh Allen. Just obviously he doesn't have the same size as Allen and doesn't have that same physicality. But I think there is a world in which he gets to the NFL and decides to just play like Josh Allen.
Yeah.
He's got all the gifts aside from the obvious size, but I don't think he's too small to play like that. I think he's got that junkyard dog in him like Josh Allen, from what I can tell. But I'd be really excited if he decided to model his game after him and really took some strides in that area.
Yep.
But yeah, so I love Drake May. I think he's great. Obviously, that's why he's number 2. I'll be excited to see who you have at 3.
Yeah, as much as I've become lower on this prospect, I still have him at 3, and it's Jayden Daniels. And I think the reason that I have him at 3 is he is an elite runner of the football. Like, ridiculous speed. Like, defensive back, wide receiver speed. He is one of the fastest ball carriers I really have ever seen tote the rock. He will make plays where the pocket collapses. Even sometimes it doesn't collapse, and he's still taking off, making dudes miss, going all the way to the house. So for that reason, I believe that running quarterbacks have higher floors. Some people call it, like, if they're able to run the football, they're like, oh, that's a project quarterback. Like, he has to be a better thrower. But I think the threat to run raises the quarterback floor day one. And there are some things to like about him as a thrower of the football. Deep ball accuracy. He was phenomenal this past year. Obviously had 2 elite deep threats with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, which maybe made it a little bit easier on him. You know, part of the case against Jayden is that team around him. But a pretty effortless deep ball thrower. Arm isn't huge, but it's enough, especially when he's a threat to run and the defense plays a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage to prevent that. There are multiple misses over the middle of the field, and maybe not misses as much as they are just non-throws that happen to open receivers, where he's looking for that deep sideline shot that he throws so well, and if that's not there, he just takes off and gets into a 6-car pileup crash at after an 8-yard gain because he doesn't slide. Oh, wow. Wow. Okay. Yeah. He is a Lamborghini on the Dallas freeway when he takes off with the football. It doesn't slide ever. I watched multiple games where I didn't chart him sliding once. So there are things to like: the elite speed, the deep ball accuracy, and there are things that, for me, I really don't like with the throwing over the middle of the field. And I'll let you talk more about him, but I want to bring up one key stat that I think is super important to me for him being lower on my board.
What is it?
I was going to let you talk about Daniels, and then.
Oh, okay. I was like, huh? I was on the lead up. So yeah, for me, I have Daniels 3 as well. He's right there for me. I like him, I think, more than you do. But I have come down on him in the past few days. I mean, just going through, I'm finishing up all the tape, doing a couple rewatches. I mean, obviously these 3 wide receivers that we've talking about, the Odunze Neighbors Harrison debate at this point. Everyone's got their own view. Everyone's got their own order. So, you're watching them 2-3 times, and just watching Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. realizing how good they are, and then to watch Jaden play and see some of those things, you start seeing, hey, that was a great play, but that was for the receiver, not so much the quarterback. Hey, that was a rough play, and the receiver played that right. Like, what happened? A couple of those little things. I mean, I like you said, I think he's got that rushing upside that's been talked to no end. So like, there's no need to really rehash. The only thing I'll say on that really is that I I like him as a rusher, but he doesn't have much escapability.
Yeah.
The thing I've highlighted on my overall for him is straight line speed. He's not making a cut. He's your Devon Achan. He's not
Right.
cutting and going a second stride. He's going the way he's going, and if someone's in his way, he's taking that hit, and it is what it is. So I mean, that's not how you want your rushing quarterback, because generally you're going to have to dodge and dip and duck and dive and dodge all these defenders downfield. But it's been working for him, so I'll give that to him. His arm talent is okay. He's got okay velocity. Where he really thrives is kind of like you said, those deep posts, which is almost more impressive just because those are some of the hardest throws to make. At least from everyone I've heard, from all the people I've listened to, like, those are the hardest throws to make, and those are what he excels at. Those deep over the middles, deep posts, all that deep accuracy, and he's got it to a key, but it's that medium, that short range where he really struggles, which you may hate it, you may disagree because I know you did a lot of tape on him, but he reminds me of Anthony Richardson. He's just not as ripped. He's a slender version of him to me, where he struggles in the short and the medium accuracy, has great deep accuracy, has great rushing upside, but that's kind of where it goes. Now I think AR had much better velocity, but I mean, that's just kind of one of those things. You can't comp everyone perfectly. And then the only other thing that concerns me with Jaden would be the one season. He's young, right. He's older. But he's only got one real season of this excellent production. Now, it was a Heisman level production, but it's one season, and it's with great company around him. It's really hard not to knock him for the talent that was around him. And I know that's kind of unfair to him, but at the same point, that's just the hand he was dealt. So yeah, I think I agree with him at 3. I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah, I surprised myself a little bit where I was like, I love the athletic quarterbacks. Anthony Richardson was my QB1 last year coming out. Stroud was QB2. I had them both over Bryce Young. But he was QB1 for me coming out, and I looked internally. I had this internal dialogue where I was like, why was I so high on Richardson and so low on Daniels? Not so low, lower on Daniels. They have a lot of the same stuff that I like, the elite rushing floor. Obviously, Richardson has the much bigger arm, is the kind of freakier athlete. But I was watching Daniels and went, oh my God, he struggles in the pocket, moving around, sliding around. Mm-hmm. Anthony Richardson was so good in the pocket. I thought it was something that a lot of people didn't talk about. He didn't take a lot of sacks, really, ever. He was great hitting the back of his drop, and then if the pocket collapsed around him, he was sliding up in the pocket. He would, if the pocket broke one way, he'd take a step or two the other way. He wanted to throw from the pocket, where Daniels has the propensity to take off if not everything is perfect around him. And that didn't happen a lot because he has 2 first-round offensive tackles next year. Both those guys will go in the first round. But then you look at the graph, the stat that I was alluding to was pressure to sack rate, where if you look at it, there's a graph out there somewhere over, I think it's quarterbacks from the past 5 years, where Richardson is in the top right of that in terms of, a lot of pressures and not a lot of sacks, and Daniels is at the very, very bottom in terms of bottom left. If he is pressured, typically he gets sacked. So I think that is the main difference for me between him and Richardson, and I disagree a little bit. I don't think their play styles are the same, obviously, but I finally caught it when I was watching. I was like, this guy just doesn't react to pressure well. And he's maybe it's because he is obviously a slender build, and we see it when he's out in the open field. He doesn't feel pressure well and gets decked and gets brought down because of it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I can see what you're saying. As soon as you said the pocket thing, I agree with that. Jaden is not a pocket quarterback. He hates the pocket almost.
Yeah,
So I agree with that. I think the comp for me was just
like the running
maybe
quarterback and
physicalities.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's where it was. What is the? Did you have that stat still?
I can find it real quick. If you want to talk about your QB lead into your QB4, I can try to pull this
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, so QB4, I don't think this is any surprise. Again, these are mostly chalk. I mean, it's pretty easy to tell who you want when you want them. JJ McCarthy for me. I think there's something to be said for a championship mentality. For a guy who's got it done so much for so long. I actually just saw a post that was kind of funny for me, but it was really the basically someone was like, "Oh, we're supposed to, trust all what's happened." So Caleb Williams, Heisman quarterback, Drake May has had 5,000 yards, 45 passing touchdowns. Jaden Daniels, Heisman quarterback, JJ McCarthy, just trust us. And I thought that was funny, but it is one of those things where I understand the feeling behind that. There's nothing we've really seen from this guy, but the one thing I would say is, while he's not the flashiest on the stat sheet, I mean, he he had 500 yards in 11 games 2 years ago. The year before this one, 2,700 yards in 14 games. Last year, 2,900 yards in 15 games. No real gaudy stats to look at. It's nothing impressive, but when you look at the tape, that's what's impressive. He's the definition for me of you have to look past the stat board. Because the second you do, you see a guy who's in command of his team, who his team trusts him, his coach trusts him. He has all authority in that offense. He knows what has to be done. When his coach says, "Hey, we're going to run it 30 straight times on this team," that's what we're doing. He goes, "Yes, sir, that's what we're doing," and doesn't throw a fit, doesn't go crazy that, "Hey, I didn't get my share of this." He doesn't throw a fit because, "Hey, I wanted to throw some more. I only got to throw 7 times this game." Instead, he goes, "Yeah, you know what you're doing. We're gonna go ahead and win this game. I don't care about anything else. We're winning the game." To me, that's kind of that leadership thing where I was talking about. That's that mentality that you want out of your quarterback. That's not going, "Hey, give me the ball absolutely every time." So he's not maybe not the killer instinct you like to see, but at the same time, I think he still has some of that. It's just he has also the, "Hey, I want to win above all else." So for me, his throwing motion is phenomenal. It's a really clean, really smooth throwing motion. Pretty good arm talent. He needs to get a little more velocity on it. He's got pretty good mobility, shocking mobility I wasn't expecting to see from 3-cone and stuff like that on his pro day. He doesn't shy away from hard throws, so tight windows, back shoulders, all the tough throws. He doesn't shy away from them. He is not scared about throwing over the middle of the field. And he's perfectly fine staying in the pocket, kind of the reverse of Jaden Daniels. He's willing to take the hit if he has to get the pass off. He's perfectly happy sitting there in that pocket all day if he has to. He kind of has some similar concerns to some other quarterbacks. So obviously he's not the biggest guy. We can see that can go either way. He loves primary reads a little bit too often sometimes, so he can get stuck on them, really frozen on them, and kind of give that away to the defense. But overall, I think in the end, he is your clean. He's NFL ready, and he's going to do whatever your coach wants. I think he's going to fit a lot of systems in this league.
Yeah, I think obviously, he wasn't asked to do a lot of what people look for in draft ready quarterbacks in their analysis stuff. But when he did it really well. He did it at a high level. And there's something to be said about a guy who, like you said, is good size, not great size, good speed, very much a threat to run. They ran a lot of QB option at Michigan, and he chunked off long gains. Good arm, good in the middle of the field, up the seam especially. He had 2 really good tight ends this past year that he threw to a lot. Didn't necessarily have the big-time X wide receiver. I like Roman Wilson, but that option wasn't necessarily available to him to throw the deep ball effectively a lot in games. I think that he's also my 4. I'll put that out there. I think that he has. Yes, you had to watch maybe double the film on him to get as many NFL throws as the other guys in this class, uh, but he does it at a high level. I think the processing is something to be concerned about in terms of getting to that second and third read. But I like JJ McCarthy. I think he projects well to the NFL. I'm really interested to see who gets their hands on him because, as always, system matters. Um, he's got the tools, though. I was pleasant. I was expecting to be low on JJ McCarthy. I was pleasantly surprised with his film, though. Um, I would love him in Denver with Sean Payton. That's my kind of ideal landing spot, but obviously we'll see where he ends up in April, and maybe we can reshape our evaluation of him once he lands on the team that he's on.
For sure.
All right.
Yeah, I think for him, the biggest thing I would like is just to see him do it.
Yeah.
I think that's why seeing him throw was so important for a lot of these guys is because, like you said, he doesn't have near the amount of throws that the other quarterbacks in this process have. Not because of not having the time, but just because of the system he was in. That system was all about winning, and it didn't give a crap about anything else.
Nope. That team sent 6 offensive linemen to the NFL Combine.
Yep.
They were built to run the football, and he's been he was highly touted when he got to Michigan as a quarterback. People were excited. He got Cade McNamara out of Michigan. He went and played at Iowa, so McCarthy could start as a sophomore. He's a good player. I think a lot more people are coming around on him now. Obviously, at the end of the season, it was horrible agenda pushing about. They didn't even trust him to throw the football. All they did was run it. But like you said, it's what won them games, and they had a good defense. I do think there is mechanical stuff, especially throwing to the left side of the field, where he'll kind of open up, let the ball get away from a little bit, open up that front shoulder. I mean, and apparently he's working on that right now. It's been his emphasis during this offseason leading up to the draft. I also found, I don't know if you noticed it as well, he throws the heater a lot. There is not, even in the red zone, he doesn't take much off of the football. 6-yard completions, he's just ripping them into whatever window he can try and fit it to. So in terms of the height of his ball, got tipped quite a bit. Just because he does throw it so low on a frozen rope trying to fit it in there. So touch and throwing to the left side of the field, I think, will be the two big things when he gets to the NFL that he needs to work on, in addition to the increased workload of playing NFL quarterback. You're just going to have to throw more than what he did at Michigan. But
I agree with that. I think those are his two weaknesses, and I think I'll be interested to see where he lands, basically.
I will too. But we can get into 5, and this may be where we have some disagreement. Because I
am excited.
I know who you really, really like at this part of the draft.
Love him.
And I am not. I like him. I like Michael Penix Jr. a little bit more. I think that this same stat, by the way, which I did pull up, projects to Penix really well as well. So we were talking about Jaden Daniels and Anthony Richardson. This chart from PFF is college quarterback prospects' career average time to throw and their pressure to sack rate. So more time to throw, and then on the y-axis, and then pressure to sack on the x-axis. The lowest pressure to sack rate since 2014 is Michael Penix Jr. He also had kind of in the bottom 25th percentile of time to throw. And then I talked about Richardson looking really, really good on this chart as well. He is the second lowest pressure to sack rate of any QB since 2014, with close to the most time to throw. So he's back there either, you could believe that's great protection. It wasn't at Florida. It was more so moving around quite a bit and being a creator. That's kind of on that side of the...
Say.
Yeah, exactly. And then Daniels falls towards the very top of pressure to sack rate with about an average time to throw. He was also obviously creating more. The way you can determine what time to throw means. Either they had the great O-line they were creating, or they were just getting out of the pocket early. But the only people that are higher than Daniels in pressure to sack rate were Will Levis, Tanner McKee, Sam Howell, Hendon Hooker, and KJ Jefferson. So it's a good chart. Obviously, it's not a tell-all chart in terms of projections, but it's Anthony Richardson agenda pushing, and I enjoy doing that. But for this guy, Michael Penix, least amount of time to throw. Obviously, he's not creating at all, and that's kind of the big gripe with him. I don't care what his 40 time says. He is not. He is throwing from the pocket. But lowest.
It was a nice 40 time though.
He did. It was. I think it was. What was it?
I almost texted you about it. Yeah, from the different reports, 4.46 to 4.50.
I mean, flying. I don't ever see it on tape. Ever, not one time. He doesn't. He much prefers to throw from the pocket, which obviously is perfectly fine, especially when you have the lowest pressure to sack ratio of any quarterback prospects of 2014. So he is a bona fide pocket passer, and he can sling it. The deep ball is beautiful. Romo Dunze, Jalen McMillan, and Jalen Polk benefited from it tremendously this past year. Can sit in the pocket and just pick you apart. So if you're a team that's looking to do that, I think he's the pick. Like I said, he's not going to create. Has a really funky release, but it's very snappy. It gets the ball out quick. I think he's a good processor. I also think that he benefited from having arguably the best wide receiver core and statistically the best offensive line in college football this past year. 2 ACL injuries at Indiana that have, obviously been scary, but now he's played a couple of years of injury-free football. He's just, to me, he reminds me a little bit of like a Phillip Rivers, where it's a weird arm angle and they're throwing it from the pocket, but it's a cerebral quarterback and it's just going to get the job done. So I have him at 5. I assume that his biggest college rival is your 5th.
Yeah, so I'll speak on Penix for a minute, and then I'll go to my 6. My draft darling. So Michael Penix, there is nothing I could say about the upper half of his body.
Yeah.
His processing and his arm talent, top notch.
Yep.
There's really nothing to criticize on that. He's really exceptional in those areas. Where I critique him is the bottom half. He's kind of got those heavy feet. He doesn't climb the pocket, and kind of like you referenced, he's not, which now doesn't make sense. So I don't know if it's a mental thing that he doesn't want to be mobile or what. And now that I think about it, it's almost like Stroud last year. They have the talent, they have the speed, they have the mobility. They're just not using it. It's a little confusing. And it very well may have just been coached into him that, hey, right. You're not scrambling. That's not how we're doing this. He's got a phenomenal offensive line, so why not just trust that line? But that kind of goes back to my biggest problem was there were a lot of plays where I saw him and he made it work, but like if he would just take a step or two deeper into the front pocket, he would have had so much more time and could have gotten something. Now, he still made most of those plays work, and it's a testament to his arm talent and his processing, but it's one of those things he could have made it a little bit easier on him by climbing up in the pocket. The only other thing I'd really have on him is he relies on his first read a little too much. He can be kind of somewhat locked into that as well, but that's really the only thing. I mean, it's really hard for him. The biggest things for him are the injury concerns and the age. I mean, those are his two biggest downsides. Aside from that, I think he's pretty dang set a first-round quarterback. I think that's why it's hard to pop him in this draft and go, hey, he's a for sure first round, because without those injuries and being 2 years younger, he'd be in the argument for number 2. But with that age, those injuries, it's one of those things. How much are these NFL teams counting that against him? How much will that impact where he gets drafted?
It absolutely matters. There are people who say it doesn't matter. It matters. He tore his ACL twice. That is in the back of their mind 100%. It doesn't matter how good the film looks, and the film looks solid. I don't think he gets into the first round because of that, but I think a team, I like the idea of. I still think they end up going quarterback, especially if Jaden goes at 2. But I still like the idea of like a Marvin and then a second round uh, Michael Michael Penix to like the Patriots and just see what happens. But I'll give you the floor now to talk about your honey bunches, your sweet pea.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is where he'll go. I will say, last thing on Michael Penix, I'm excited for him. I think he's going to make a pretty good quarterback, and I'll be excited. If he does go to the second round, he's going to go to a great situation, being able to be paired with one of these first-round talents. So with that being said, here we are, my draft darling, Bo Nix. Man can do no wrong. He's the perfect quarterback. I already see him in the orange and navy of the Broncos. He's a perfect fit. No, I'm just kidding. Listen, I love the dude. The dude is a baller. He has that dog mentality for me. And for me, a lot of what I've seen, I mean, every year he has progressed. Back when he was with Arizona. Auburn, sorry.
No, you're good.
Back when he was with Auburn, he was it's really interesting. I loved watching his tape because you can see the progression. He almost played he did play a very RPO style. He was gonna either scramble on you, throw it, or hand it off, or scramble and throw it. Like he was a mixed bag, and he wasn't the greatest. And I think it was just putting way too much on him way too early. Then you see him kind of solidify everything he's doing, simplify it, and then he goes to Oregon, and he absolutely balls out with their offense. And really, we're not getting too much from that offense without him. Troy Franklin was a burner, and he's a good wide receiver, and he's going in this draft. He's going to go probably late first, early second. But man, he went toe-to-toe with Michael Penix and just had zero hesitation about it. He didn't have the offensive line. He didn't have the wide receivers that Michael Penix had, and he still kept up. So definitely, I think where he excels, his best part of his game is the mental. I think pre-snap reads are where he really shines. Everything pre-snap, his brain is engaged, and it is working, and it is phenomenal to see. He recognizes pressure. He recognizes coverages. It's great. Under pressure and basically those negative plays, he does well at avoiding those. He's not one of those guys that panics under pressure that you have to worry about, hey, once he sees someone in his face, he's freaking out. No, he's very calm under pressure, very poised. He's very balanced in the pocket and outside of the pocket. I think kind of like Penix, his main thing against him is his footwork. He needs to work on it. It's not clean. His drops are pretty messy in his footwork. He's pretty random. You can tell he doesn't have very organized habits with his footwork. Aside from that, I really like him. And it's a lot of, he's my draft darling, so I'm sure I'm looking over a lot of stuff. But for me, this dude can chuck it. He's got pretty good arm talent, pretty good velocity, pretty good mentals, great pre-snap, and the real main thing is just his footwork. But he's perfectly fine sitting in the pocket. He's perfectly fine jogging outside of the pocket, and he's looking to always kill it. And then on top of that, another thing I really like about him, because I love these type of quarterbacks that will accept the checkdowns. He is perfectly fine with a check down. He is always looking to kill you with that bomb, but if you're not going to give it to him open, you're going to give this 3, 4, 5 yard out to him, he's going to take it, and he's going to love it, and he's perfectly fine with it. And those are the quarterbacks that I find to be so successful, because you get 2 pass plays of 4 yards, and then all you got to do is run for 2, and sometimes those 4-yard passes, they end up breaking for 5, 6, 7, 8, and you just keep that simple going through, basically. If he goes to a team that will let him keep it simple, which is why I love him to the Broncos and Sean Payton, because Sean Payton knows quarterbacks. Sean Payton knows how to keep it simple with them. I think if he goes to Sean Payton, I think he is going to be one of the best quarterbacks out of this class. I know that's a bold statement, but man, everything I've seen on tape, I loved. Obviously, he had a rough beginning, but like I said, I think they're throwing too much at him too early. I think he's been able to now mature and grow in a simpler offense and an easier offense. And now he can start developing and becoming the great quarterback that he's going to be.
That he's going to be. Yeah, I do like Bo Nix. Part of my process watching Oregon you see there is the creativity, there is the throwing off platform, there is a very nice deep ball, throws it well. Um, and part of me is like, you can't fool me. Like I remember Bo Picks at Auburn. I remember that guy. That's what they called him. They booed him out of Auburn. Uh, and he went to the Pac-12 and completely had a career resurgence. Um, there are a lot of things he does well. Uh, for me, it's the one of the lowest A dot average depth of target in college football. For a guy who has good arm strength, is the arm talent is there, the deep ball is there, but Oregon loved to run like the screen pass, like the bubble screen, uh, short routes that developed into things like you were talking about. A lot of the checkdowns maybe were on purpose. Um, he just they didn't really let him cook, and I don't know if it's you know a lot of questions this draft cycle is, did he not do it because he wasn't asked to, or did he not do it because he couldn't do it? And I have no reason to believe that Bo Nix can't run an offense, uh, but the low A dot that he was schemed into is concerning for me a little bit. It was very dink and dunky, but again at the same time, like he the arm talent's there. He throws a nice deep ball. Uh, I think it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. Uh, Again, Bucky Irving on that offense was good and benefited a lot from that short screen stuff. Troy Franklin, kind of the over-the-top burner. So a solid team around him, a high-profile offense that scored a bunch of points like they do so often in the Pac-12. Same thing Michael Penix Jr. just did. So I think Nix is at 6 for me, not over Penix, but I mean that's what this is all about anyway. So.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what we're alluding to. So you have Penix and then Nix, and I have Nix then Penix.
Yeah.
And I agree. I obviously with someone you have such strong feelings for, like Bo Nix, like someone I like that much. There's certainly the rose-colored glasses. So me seeing his load A dot, and I easily just go, oh yeah, that was their system. They're throwing those bubble screens, just throwing those short passers, those short crosses over the middle, and that's how they're playing, and he's doing it well. And I think that's where I kind of justified it was, well, he's doing it well. So like if he were missing these throws or like throwing them behind the receiver or just making negative plays out of these, yeah, sure, I can understand. But with the low A dot, but the success rate for me kind of cancels it out.
I have an interesting question before we wrap up on these quarterbacks.
Oh boy,
because your Bo Nix of today is your Will Levis of yesteryear.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love Will Levis.
If Will Levis came out this year, where would he be on your board?
Oh, that's hard. That's pretty good. Man, I'll be honest. So I would still take Caleb 1, obviously. Mm-hmm. Drake May 2, I think.
I think that's where the conversation starts.
Exactly.
Honestly. I think that while this class is very talented, the point I'm making is that we both liked Will Levis coming out, and the big arm and the creativity, the speed, the run you over, don't give a fuck type quarterbacking that he had, which was so fun to watch. Not always the most efficient, but the talent was always there, and is still there obviously for him with the Titans. But like he fell to the second round, and we were expecting all these quarterbacks to go high this year, and we're debating putting him over Jaden Daniels. So like there are more.
Yeah, that's because he was eating bananas with the peels on.
That's that, and putting mayo on his coffee and all that stuff. But there are more quarterback needy teams this year. But like I have the flashbacks to the. Everybody liked Will Levis. I think Mel Kiper had him QB1 last year. And obviously there were detractors with everybody. There are detractors to Caleb Williams. But he fell to the second round. So I don't know how on board I can get with the narrative that like 4 quarterbacks are going in the first 4, 6 quarterbacks are going in the first round. I just don't. I can't buy it.
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying, and I agree. The one thing I will say is if I had to put him in this draft class, I would probably put him right under Bo Nix. and honestly
Really?
probably under Penix as well.
Damn.
So for Levis, what I loved about him was and what I was kind of thinking while you were putting it, he is the Josh Allen that Drake May is missing. He has the size and that I'm gonna run through you. I don't care how big you are, and I'm gonna throw this up, and my receiver's gonna come down with it. I hope. And so he has all those, which aren't the best parts of Josh Allen, but they're the most likable. And I definitely think that's where I loved Will Levis was his moxie, his willingness to, I'm going to run you over whether I can or not, and I'm going to chuck this up, and I have faith that I've got a good enough arm and my receiver is good enough. I just think for me, Michael Penix has too much arm talent to be under him. I think Bo Nix has way better pre-snap. And this is where maybe my rankings are wrong. I think I would rather put him over Bo Nix than Michael Penix.
Okay.
But for me, I have Bo Nix over Michael Penix. But I don't think I would put him over Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels has shown enough that
Right.
I do think he's in that top tier. I think the conversation is definitely between right when you get to that 4 through 6. Where would he go? And I think if it were me, I would be most comfortable putting him at 7 rather than at 4.
I think if he was coming out this year, for me personally, I think there would be a lot of chatter about whether you take him or McCarthy. I think I might slide him in at 4 over McCarthy.
Yeah, and I wouldn't hate that, just because I think that's kind of what I'm saying is I think 4, 5, and 6, McCarthy, Nix, Penix, I think each one of them, there's a conversation to be had for different reasons why you would take Levis or not. But each one has the reason, like, oh, well, this is why I would take him over Levis, as opposed to this is why I would take Levis over him.
Yeah. I thought that would be a fun conversation. And now, obviously, Levis sucks and he's a bust and the Titans blow. So there's not much of it. There's not much.
I've seen that. I've seen that a lot. I don't know why people are saying Levis is a bust. He played really well last year. But even Titans fans are like, "Oh, we need a quarterback. He's trash."
I think
he wasn't great.
I think
he was.
You give him another year, but I think there's some bias maybe from the Steelers game the Steelers game where he had a solid game. I think that was his debut, and then he was not as good the rest of the year. But there's still obviously a route to him being good. That was more of an anti-Titans thing than an anti-Levis thing.
We here for the anti-Titans stuff.
Of course. So we can move on. You want to go a whole new position group? You want to go receivers or running backs?
Let's go running back. There will be a little bit more variation there.
Mm-hmm. So I think maybe we should start at, if that's the case, we should start at 5 and work our way up to 1.
Yeah.
So the 5th for me, and I have a question mark next to his name because I really feel comfortable about 4. And after that, it's like, I don't know. Like, it depends on where these guys end up. But for 5th, at least for now, is Trey Benson. Everybody loved him. Everybody loves him. There are people calling him RB1. I think he is talented. Obviously, bursty, has good speed, a bigger body, which is what you're looking for durability-wise. For me, I thought he was too stiff on tape. I didn't think he's as fluid of a mover as his speed would tell you. And I don't know. I think we could probably cook through these running back rankings. So that may be all I say. Did Benson crack your top 5, or is he not at 5? Where's he at for you?
He's first man out for me. He's number 6.
Yeah.
My main problem with him, he's trying to hit a home run every time. So he doesn't give his O-line time to set. If he gained a little bit more patience, I think that would do him wonders. Because I think he has the talent. It's just he tries to rush everything, and that never works in the NFL.
And patience behind the line is a big evaluating factor for me. I love to see guys who can kind of sit back there and move back and forth, pick the right hole, and do that at a high level. And I'm with you. I didn't really see it with Benson. Obviously a top tier athlete, but nothing special that I saw from him off the tape.
Yeah. So that'll give me my 5. My 5, this guy, I have loved him and will love him, and I love Wisconsin running backs. Shout out JT.
Mm-hmm.
Braylon Allen. He is a mammoth of a running back, and he just has strength out the wazoo. I mean, this dude, when you see him and then you see him play, he plays with amazing strength, amazing explosiveness. He's got a good top speed. Um, he's really hard to bring down on the first hit, which I love. I love broken tackles. I think where he lacks is he's incredibly inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
He his vision and his routes in space. I just sometimes you're watching him, you're like, oh yeah, that was perfect. Like that was a great run. Hit the hole, hit the right space after the hole, went into the secondary. Great. The next run, he hits the complete wrong hole and runs right into a linebacker, and you're like, what on earth are you thinking? He's gotten lucky with his size and his strength and stuff. That's made it to where he's still produced even though having those errors. And so that's kind of why I have him at 5. Is he has almost a physicality that allows him to have some errors in his game at the end at the vision and the consistency part. But they have at some point we have to bring that into conversation. So that's why I have him at 5. I love him. I would have him higher. But I do think he's got all those things, but it's just that little nick of needs to get the consistency down, and that could just be maturity because he is incredibly young.
Yep, I think just turned 20, which in terms of being an NFL GM, I'm sure they're licking their chops looking at Braylon Allen, a young Wisconsin running back with this type of size and power. He was on that, just like you had Benson, as kind of like those next guys out. That's where he fell for me. I think he is like the crazy power and the crazy size is like that's his bag to me. I didn't see a lot of elusiveness. If he's going to break a tackle, it's going to be by going through you or hitting you with a nasty stiff arm, and that's about it. And sometimes he just looks to stiff arm everybody all the time. Like he could totally be set up for a juke move and just throw the arm out and try to break a tackle that way. Which obviously as a runner can slow you down. Doesn't have like home run speed. Didn't see much of him as a receiver. I'm sure he's capable, but those Wisconsin running backs never really get that was one of the knocks against Jonathan Taylor, who you mentioned when he was coming out, was that he couldn't catch the ball. And then he got to the NFL and he's like a solid receiver. So that's yet to be seen. A freak in terms of size. A Derrick Henry comp, maybe. Obviously not.
6'2", 245.
Yeah, I mean, just a massive human
Insane.
being.
And it's all muscle.
Yeah, it's been all muscle since he was 16 years old.
God.
He was posting, he's just a freak. He's a mountain of a human being. He's going to be fun to watch wherever he goes, but to me, he's certainly like a one-trick pony. And red zone situations, goal line situations, see who can stop him. That's going to be the fun part of it. But we can move to 4, and you're not going to like this one. But this is where I have Jonathan Brooks out of Texas. And I think that most of it...
Need to know why. I need to know why.
Most of it is attributed to the ACL tear.
Okay, cool. I'm good with that.
I think that as a runner, he's obviously talented. Good speed, not necessarily anything elite. A good mover with the ball in his hands. Again, not necessarily elite. He feels like when you're like creating a player and you choose like speed or power or balance, like he's just balance everywhere. He doesn't necessarily do one thing exceptionally well. If you're going to argue anything for that, I think it'd be as a pass catcher, and maybe being behind Bijan Robinson for a little bit. Obviously, Texas likes to throw their running backs. I think so. He is dynamic as a pass catcher. There were instances where he's decisive when like choosing if he's gets the carry straight at the middle. He can cut from one gap to another pretty effortlessly and does that at a high level. But if he's sitting back there kind of just bouncing and choosing, he winds up getting tackled the backfield quite a bit. I do think he's east to west more than north to south, which is kind of jargon at this point with running backs, where you'd rather just see a guy just take it up the field, dude. Or like bounce it out, get upfield. And he's kind of just sitting back there looking, and sometimes that can end up in tackles for loss. There's not a lot of, like I said, I'm much more comfortable in these top 4 running backs than anybody else. There's not a lot of gripes for him. He just, to me, like I said, he didn't do one thing exceptionally well like these 3 guys I have over him did. and that's why he just kind of wound up at 4. And obviously the ACL didn't help him either.
Yeah, so we'll go with this. I've got him at
I
1.
figured, yeah.
That's not much surprise. And it's kind of what you're saying for the same reasons, which is funny. For me, he is the most well-rounded back in this class. He can do whatever you need him to do. He's got good vision, both zone and power runs. He's got great contact balance, real good natural instincts. He doesn't have elite long speed, but he has good burst and enough speed to make it worth it. Pretty good hands in the receiving game, good footwork, impressive wiggle, all the things that you want to see in a running back. I think he is your stereotypical. He does everything well, some things good, but nothing great.
Yeah.
Which is something I like. I agree. The north to south lack of north to south can be a problem. He can get locked into that patience, and then become kind of tunnel visioned into waiting for that perfect hole, and then it doesn't arrive and he gets hit in the backfield. I 100% agree with that. There were definitely some plays this year that I saw of his doing that really frustrated me. But I mean, aside from that's really my main qualm with him. That's why I have him at 1. I do think he is the most complete back in this class. I think he has some pretty good things going on. My favorite things about him are kind of the same things as Braylon Allen. 20 years old.
Yep.
He's 6 foot 207. Great size for a running back. Great size for a utility back. And he's still young. Still has this impressive combine work. So for me, that's why I have him at 1. I think he's a great back.
Yeah, like I said, I agree, and I think there's something to be said. I don't know if you checked out The Beast yet from Dane Brugler.
I haven't.
Evaluating. Are you familiar with the Beast?
Yeah, I am.
Over 400 prospects, write-ups from Dane Brugler over at The Athletic, and in his kind of write-up for Jonathan Brooks, he mentions that Coach Sarkisian, he was such a big part of that Texas offense that Coach Sarkisian brought him in for the kneel out in the final bowl game after weeks after he tore his ACL. So there is something to be said about what the team, what the school thought of him, and again, a very balanced running back. I think there's obviously a road to him being very good in the NFL, but I am a sucker for guys who do like one thing really, really elite.
No, for sure. I mean, I think there's definitely something to be said for that. And I will say for me, like one of the also things that impresses me the most is he was not the starter coming into the season, and then absolutely dominated enough to be like, oh yeah, he's the starter by like game 3, game 4. And then he was so impactful that when he went down with the injury, there was a noticeable lack in our running game.
Yep.
So I definitely think that's a testament to him as well, and something I love to see. So then with that said, we'll go to my number 4, and we'll see where he ranks on yours. It's going to be funny if he's not even on yours. But anyway, so my number 4, so 5, Braylon Allen. 4 is going to be Marshawn Lloyd out of USC.
Yep.
I think kind of along the lines of the same of these other guys. He's a little bit smaller, 5'9", 210, 23, so he's a little bit older. But he's going to be a solid NFL back. Pretty good. He's got that NFL caliber speed and acceleration. Pretty good athleticism. Some impressive explosiveness. I'll give him that. And he's got real good making players miss ability. And that's really just, I mean, that's him. I mean, he's a solid back. He too, like Jonathan Brooks, can want to bounce it out to the left and the right too much, going too much east-west, not enough north-south, so that can be a problem. And he's not as observant for like cutback lanes. He's not great at spotting those. But aside from that, he's a pretty well-rounded back. For me, he's 4. He's there. Nothing really sticks out to me. For me, he's a jack of all trades. He's okay at everything, but unlike Jonathan Brooks, I don't think he has that thing those couple things that he's good at. I think it's just he's okay at everything. But aside from that, I mean, that's why he's 4. I don't think he's anything impressive, but I do think he's enough. He's got everything at an NFL caliber level. I think he'll be a decent enough caliber back, probably settle into a committee somewhere.
Yep, it's a good transition because he's at 3 for me.
Nice.
He, like I said, with Brooks, I'm looking for one thing that I think, you do really, really well. Like running back most of the time. Obviously, you're looking for the guy that can do it all. most of the time you're playing a role. And I saw Marshawn Lloyd as an elite receiver out of the backfield. And it was a guy who Caleb Williams relied on a lot with a bad offensive line that you had to dump it down to. The game that did it for me, because there was some debate about, where does Brooks fall, where does Lloyd fall on my ranking. It was the UCLA game where Leatu Latu was destroying shit just destroying USC's O line, and Caleb and Marshawn Lloyd balled. They had huge days. He's really impressive to me as a receiving back. I think that he slots right into that role if somebody's looking for that. I think you can get creative with him in motion. A better receiver than he is like a route runner. And as a runner of the football, like you said, he can make cuts quick, gets up the field, can make guys miss. So I like Lloyd, but I especially like him as the receiving threat.
Yeah, I could see that. I don't know that I would qualify him as elite. I think obviously that's where I would differ, but I mean I do see he does have that receiving talent that for sure was on display at USC with Caleb Williams, especially when Caleb Williams doesn't really have a receiver. I mean his top receiver was Brendan Rice, and then Taj Washington.
Taj Washington, yeah.
It was a rough receiving class, so I definitely see that from him. But yeah. So then my 3 might be your 2. Unless we're going different lists. Jalen Wright out of Tennessee, 21 years old, 5'11", 210. He's got good size, good age, some nice youth. Youth comes with both the positive and negative, low mileage, but also It does show a lack of consistent running back vision. He can kind of be a little wish-washy on that. Although his athleticism is nothing you can dispute. This dude is an athlete.
A freak.
He's an athlete even in the NFL standard. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be huge. He's got a crazy explosive first step. Probably one of the best I've seen in a long time from the running back position, especially out of this class. Is far and away the best. Has good long speed. He's great in the pass protection, which is going to lock him in a job, which is one of the things I love to see. The biggest things I saw, he can catch the ball. It just doesn't look comfortable doing it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that was just because it didn't look like it didn't look like something Milton could have helped him with. It didn't look like bad passes or anything like that. It just looked like when he catches the ball, he doesn't know what to do with it. Unlike when he's handed it, he knows, hey, I'm going to take this cut, I'm going to take this lane, I'm going to do this. But when he catches it, he's like, what do I do now? Which is a little weird, and I'd like to see how he responds to that in the NFL. We'll see. But aside from that, I mean, he's a pretty impressive dude. He's got the athleticism, which you love to see in these skill positions. I mean, it's part of their makeup that they have to succeed. He comes from a good school in Tennessee who trends out some decent running backs. And then he's that first step is really his top-notch thing. Mm-hmm. I think if how you're talking, have that one thing. I mean, his first step is impressive off the jump.
Yep, he is my number 1 in this class. His burst, that first step, is ridiculous. He shoots out of a cannon with the ball in his hands. Mm-hmm. And obviously, like you said, that's applicable anywhere at the NFL level. If you can get up and out of there and go score touchdowns, they're going to want you. And that's what Jalen Wright has a propensity to do. And he's, like you said, like good size, 5'10 and a half, 210, and ran a 4.38 40, that's pretty damn elite. That's an athlete.
Yeah.
He is fast, especially off the first step. Obviously can get away, hit the home run, but he's not always looking to do that. He is looking to take what he can, which I liked a lot. You said enough about him. I love Jalen Wright. I think he's going to be really, really good.
So who's your 2?
So wait. I had Trey Benson, Brooks, Lloyd, my 2, and then Jalen Wright. And then you had
and
Allen, Lloyd, Wright, 2, and Brooks. So
Brooks.
We haven't shared both of our 2 yet.
Yep.
Okay.
It's going to be the same guy?
Mine's Audric Estime.
Oh, it's not. No.
Really?
What? Okay.
throw out the 40 time for Audric Estime. I know what I saw.
Listen, he did better in his pro day. He recovered on his pro day.
Like pro day, they could lie a little bit, obviously, because it's for them. Like they would rather the prospect do really well. That dude is a bowling ball, and he's built like a Dodge Ram. He is a big ass dude. I'm pulling up the exact height weight.
I can get that for you. Hold on. That's 5'11", 227.
Yeah, dude, that is a even almost more so than Braylon Allen. Like, come and hit me and see what happens. He is like balled out against Ohio State, which Ohio State's defense wasn't tremendous this past year. There's not like it isn't a big. There's not a lot of analysis from me why I have him at number 2. It's just like big guy moves fast, runs people over, and it was just fun for me to watch. Like I said, throw out the 40 time. This guy's getting downhill, and there were times on tape where he did break away and had home run speed. Nobody was necessarily catching him in the open field. But I'd see him as a bruiser, and obviously my top bruiser in this class, which is a fun running back archetype.
Yeah, I thought we were going to have the same guy. I guess I should have known by our pre-talk of this pod that we weren't. Estime is number 7 for me.
Okay.
So, I mean, he's not crazy far down, I guess, out of all the guys who they have. My real thing is he's the opposite of Jalen Wright, which is why I was surprised that you have him at 2.
They're two very different running backs at 1 and 2.
Jalen Wright comes out like he shot out of a cannon, like you said. Audric Estime, he gets handed the ball,
turn it
waits
up, dude.
a second, takes a slow
He's got to turn it up.
waits another
He's
second.
looking for somebody to kill. That's what he's looking for. He's locking on.
It takes him so long to get out of that backfield. It's like he's camping.
Yeah.
But that's my critique. I mean, that is, like you said, he's got that great size. He's got great strength. He is looking to punish people on those runs. He's got a very Derrick Henry-like feel to him. But I think
he was training with Derrick Henry recently too. So
it wouldn't surprise me.
That's the idea.
He should be.
Yeah.
Him and Braylon Allen should be. Those are the two that should be taking the crown from Derrick Henry. But for me, it's just the movement for him. I don't disagree that he's strong and he's a punishing back, but I need to see his speed. I need to see his burst. I need to see his change of direction all improve. Sure. All of them. And that's where he's fallen. He has pigeonholed himself into this power back role, and the NFL, it just doesn't work. When you don't have speed and just have power, the only real guys you can think of are Henry and Chubb, and both of them have at least some speed. But aside from them, it's really hard to succeed in the NFL if you're just a power back. But enough of that. I'll stop hating on him.
I was gonna say there's a role. Like if a team is looking to do that, especially with the goal guy. Again, the Beast, referencing the Beast, compared him to Chris Carson, who looked like he was gonna be the guy in Seattle for a little bit. Obviously, some injuries derailed him. I think there's always a role for somebody who can just tote the rock and go hit people and just bruise, wear you down. It's not a big success in the NFL. There aren't a lot of guys who have had like long careers, but I mean, with running back, when all these guys are taken in the 3rd and 4th round, if somebody had an idea and had a plan for a bowling ball to carry the football, he was so much fun to watch for me. That's why I have him at 2. There's really nothing else that goes into it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There's definitely that role. There's definitely that role for him out there for a goal line back that he can definitely be successful in. So then that takes me to my number 2.
Is it Bucky?
No.
Okay.
No. Bucky's 8. Bucky's below Estime for me. For me, my number 2 is Blake Corum.
That's right.
Yeah, we were kind of talking pre-pod.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
I love Corum. I wish he would have came out last year. Him being at 23 kind of sucks, but he's 5'8", 213, has that muscular, strong build. The video that always plays my mind every time is when he was rehabbing from his injury. And I don't know if you've ever done them, but where they pin You go on your knees, they pin your ankles to the ground, and you lay down and try and raise yourself up. Oh, he was doing it effortlessly multiple times, and it's one of those exercises that, like, if you can do it, you've got a incredibly good muscle group there, and that relates to power. And it shows in his tape for me. For me, he's got great center of gravity. He's pretty hard to take down. He's precise, explosive. He's a great receiver. He's able to kind of get small and like get through pretty tight spaces untouched. It's impressive. He's got ideal patience, so not too much like we've talked about, not too little like we've talked about. He's got the right amount of patience. He's got that Le'Veon Bell almost patience, where he knows when it's time to go and when it's not, when a hole is good enough and when to wait another second or go too early. He's a good blocker. He's willing to block. I mean, that Michigan offense, you can't be unwilling to do any part of the game. He's willing to do it all. I think the biggest thing is just because he is short, his strides aren't very long, so his speed isn't very great.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have that top end speed. So that's really my only critique on him. I love this guy going in. I think he's going to be a solid back. I think the potential for a one back, for a non-committee backs, I think it's Jonathan Brooks, Blake Corum, and Jalen Wright, and I think the rest of them are going to fit into a system somewhere.
That's fair. Yeah, I get it. I just, there was such a stark difference for me between the 2022, I guess, and the 2023 Corum tape.
Yeah.
I think the injury hurt him. I just don't think he was as good of a running back this past year. Like you said, works behind the line, but didn't necessarily seem to burst through it once he made a decision. I think he is smart in making those decisions and patient as a runner. Not ideal size at 5'8", at 200 or so, some change. So I think it's, to me, he feels like, you said you think he'd succeed anywhere. I see him as more of like a role-based guy, and I think it'll matter how effective he is on third down carries, how that role looks for him in the NFL for a team. So, he probably ends up with Jim Harbaugh anyway for the Chargers, and I'll just let the Chargers take him.
Man, if the Chargers get him,
it'd be fun. I mean, he reunited with Harbaugh.
He'll have a nice career.
There's the patience aspect, but we can go back to talking about J.J. McCarthy, but behind the six NFL offensive linemen in Michigan too. So,
fair.
Patience to see the gaping hole that those five open up for you.
Fair.
So
I'll give you that.
Yeah, I think again it's so hard to rank running backs. So having different lists, I'm not surprised at all. And of course, you're gonna have different. Like I think last year you were higher on Devon Achane than I was. I called him a punt returner at the NFL level.
Yeah, that was crazy disrespectful. I'm so glad he proved you wrong.
Yeah, no, I called him a punt returner. I just thought he was too small, even though he was that fast. I didn't.
Which he hasn't truly proved you wrong yet.
That's true. The injury, yeah, but he looked better day one than I thought he was going to look. I seriously didn't believe he was going to play running back, so he did enough of that to prove me wrong. Do you want to break this episode into two parts? Or do you
have time to continue?
I do. Yeah, it's just up to you if you want to break them into two or not. I could.
Let's go with it.
Just keep rolling.
I can always break it into two in the back end if we need.
Okay, then we can maybe cut out this.
We'll see how long it goes.
Point. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So wide receivers.
I think we might be able to fly through tight ends because I think receivers are going to be the more interesting conversation.
For sure.
So
let's go tight end.
We both have Brock Bowers at 1, right?
No, why would we have?
Yeah, I mean,
I think that can be skipped over for the most part.
Pretty much. He's do it all. If he gets into an offense with a creative play caller, he is going to eat. He's going to be so good. He's a mismatch, whether he's lined up in the slot against either slot corners, which I've talked about slot corner being one of my favorite positions in football, being deployed more in modern NFL defenses to stop these tight ends, but 5'9", 195-pound, that's whatever, Kenny Moore, trying to stop Brock Bowers. As much as I love Kenny, like, he will get torched, and it'll be most slot corners that get torched by Brock Bowers. And then if he's brought inside and plays in line and is matched up against linebackers, he's way too fast for linebackers to try and cover him. I just think he's really, really incredible. Brett Coleman called him the one gripe in his game is the blocking. I think he's a good blocker, but he's not like the George Kittle type. If you wanted to call him like this all-world tight end, Brett Coleman called him I think I've mentioned it before, like an H-back, which is like Kyle Juszczyk's position. And Bowers, obviously, in a Kyle Juszczyk role, would be ridiculous. I just think if he gets into the right offensive system, he'll be unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Not much to say from there. So I'll be interested. Who is your number 2?
I debated because I'll show you, and I guess you'll see the rest of the list anyway. But well, no, you won't. Brock Bowers, and then like ... like gap. Like the rest of these tight ends are. It's kind of pick and choose who you want. It's hard to order these guys. It's about what you're looking for in a tight end most of the time. I still have Jatavion Sanders, even though maybe I've gone into a little bit of Texas hate this episode so far. I just think, and you'll be able to talk more on Sanders because you watched every Texas football game this past year. I think that he has size, not necessarily burner speed, but good enough speed, the size to box out linebackers when he needs to in the passing game. Fine run blocker, not a great one. Doesn't always take the best angles to run blocking, so I think that'll need to improve at the NFL level. And I think that there's some truth to, for a guy who I didn't believe was like a great route runner or a separator, he was open so much, like wide open down the field. And I think that that may point to the scheme. You know, he was schemed open a lot more than he necessarily got open, which can be a problem, but kind of the same as Bowers. Like if he gets with the right offensive head coach that can get him open, he can make you pay. But for him, and like especially in man coverage against linebackers, it is about getting open. That's kind of the struggle for him.
Yeah, so I have him at 2-2. So the reason I asked that was the next question, which you already answered. I was going to ask, who do you have closer? Your number 2 to Brock Bowers, or your number 2 to your number 3?
My number 2 to my number 3, absolutely.
Yeah, so I actually have the opposite. So for me, and this could be the opposite of yours, this is Texas love. But watching him every game this year, the reason he was open is because he has burst, and even he has burst when he's sprinting. So when he is sprinting for a seam route or something, and he's approaching a guy, I don't know if he slows down any, but he speeds up for a short time to burn past them real quick. It's really interesting and really, really impressive to watch. I think for him, so my comp for him is David Njoku, because everything you want to see in a receiving tight end, I think he has. He's got really good soft hands. He can catch a ball. He's got great athleticism. He's got good speed. He's got great burst. Pretty good height, pretty good size. He knows how to box out. Really comes off as that big, strong runner. Where he lacks, and he does lack in this one, and I think this is where he gets most of his hate is blocking.
Yeah.
He's not a good blocker. You kind of addressed it too. I mean, he's just clunky, and like as violent and as strong and as aggressive he is in the pass game, is the opposite in the run block game, in the pass block game. He's like a ballerina that just is like barely wants to touch people, barely wants to hit people. It's really strange to look at. So that is a pretty bad part of his game, but his actual receiving upside and athleticism, it's impressive. I mean, watching it all season, he was burning past linebackers pretty easy, and it's not like he was just burning past them and like didn't know what to do. He knew the soft spots and zones. He knew when he had burned past someone, when his quarterback Quinn Ewers would be looking for him. He was the safety blanket for Ewers, and then also he has a low spot in his stats, and it's actually for when our backup quarterback came in for Ewers when he was hurt. And I don't think he had trust in him, so he kind of started playing a little different. You could kind of tell in the games, but no, I love Jatavion. I think he is a baller. He's much for me. It's not like he's close to Bowers. I wouldn't say he's close. For me, it's a set apart almost as much as you say Brock Bowers is 1 for me. I would say Jatavion is 2, and then it's the rest of the slow.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think Sanders ends up. I think he will be the second tight end off the board. I don't know if anybody's really competing with him for that. I didn't even. The hands are the best part of his game. He has pretty ridiculous hands. If you throw it his way, he will more than likely come down with it, especially if he's open. Yeah, I think he's a smooth mover that maybe we disagreed a little bit on the separator part of him. I think a lot of it, maybe you think less of it is attributed to the scheming him open. I think more of it's attributed to scheming him open. I guess we will see once somebody gets their hands on him at the NFL level.
I'll be excited to see what he can do.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Absolutely. 3. I think we're gonna have the same 3 because you've talked about loving him before. Is Theo Johnson?
Okay. Yes. I was like, I don't know. Will we?
Yeah. Was a freak at the combine. Was he eventually confirmed as a perfect 10 RAS, or did he just? I think he just fell below it. Right?
999.
Like a 999. Yeah. I mean, 6'6". 260 pounds at the combine, ideal tight end speed, and just played a good tight end at Penn State. It doesn't. Again, another guy who's kind of a work in progress. Didn't show you something, exceptional. We've talked a lot about, doing one thing exceptionally well. I don't know if there's anything necessarily like that, but I think that the team who gets him, kind of like Jelani Woods in my head, like the team that's going to be able to utilize his length and his size, that's where he's going to end up being really, really good.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's definitely one of these tight ends that might be more of a impact on the blocking side of things than the offensive minded catching the ball and running it down the field. Like we talked about, his RAS score is great. He is a great runner. He has a great wingspan. Could be good in the passing game. Mm-hmm. Absolutely could be. But I think it's just where he excels is in line as that offensive tackle 6 at the 6'6", 260 pounds. Lateral movements and his change of direction leave a lot to be desired. I think that's going to hurt for his route running and stuff like that. But I do think he'll be a quality tight end at the very least in the blocking game. And then possibly if you need him to go run some routes, I think every once in a while he'll be good on that. He just won't be consistent.
And when you're that damn big, any lateral stuff you get is a plus. So that's. But he falls at 3 strictly for me, really, because of the RAS score. I just think he's a moldable piece of clay that somebody will be excited about taking.
For sure. I hope it's the Texans, to be honest.
Yeah, you've said that before. I know they interviewed him a couple times, right?
There's a lot of rumors that they love him, so we'll see.
Yep.
I don't think we need a tight end at this point, but.
Well, who do you have at 4? Because I think now it's kind of it's crapshooting at this point.
It really is, and for me, 4 and 5 are kind of the same. I think, I'll go 4. 5 is going to be obvious why he's there, but 4 is going to be for me, Cade Stover.
Okay.
For me, out of OSU, he's a 6'4", 251, so he's not that ideal size that you love to have for him. But he's had some good tape. So, I mean, he's your receiving tight end, in my opinion. He's got good contact balance, pretty good hands, only 2 drops in 2 years, which is pretty impressive. Especially when Ohio State hasn't, they had Stroud, but this year, they didn't really have that great of a quarterback. He was adequate, but he wasn't anything crazy.
No, Kyle McCord, watching Marvin Harrison tape pissed me off. I don't like how he's at Syracuse now, I think, so that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, I was happy he left. But he's got some good blocking intelligence to him, so he knows where and when to block. He's not the best at it, but I think he's more of a receiving guy. He's well-rounded, well-versed, naturally athletic. So, I think that just sticks him pretty high in this tight end class because it's really all you need out of a tight end. Only thing I would say is he didn't have that great of a route tree. So I mean, there's something to be said there. But kind of when we're talking lateral movement out of a tight end that's kind of a plus when you get it.
Sure. My 4, I'm kind of going with the fun pick, the versatility pick. It's Ben Sinnott from Kansas State.
Yep.
Won the award for the nation's top fullback at one point in college, and then obviously has bounced around as kind of a tight end and a fullback. Utility guy. You can kind of put him everywhere. Just a little over 6'3", 250 pounds. I believe almost 6'4". Yeah, 6'3", 7. 250 pounds. You talked about Stover not necessarily being the best route runner. Neither is Sinnott, but he's a really fluid athlete, especially in the hips. Strong hands, and I just think at a position where it's kind of, like we talked about it being a crapshoot on who's really better than who. I'll take the guy that can play a couple different positions and be solid at it. Give me the athlete. So I've got Ben Sinnott at 4.
Yeah, so for me, this is where I kind of had the 5-6 problem. So this is one of those. I looked at 2 guys. One was Ben Sinnott, and the other is Eric All from Iowa.
Yep. He was gonna be He was gonna be. I was gonna ask if you had any sleepers. He was gonna be mine.
Yeah, I put Eric All at my 5 just because he's Iowa. Like, look, no other reason, but he's got good size, good like athleticism to him, decently enough, and he's an Iowa tight end. You can't downplay the Iowa tight end. And then on top of that, for me, Ben Sinnott, I'm not surprised by what you said about him winning the best fullback, because that's what I see him as.
Yeah.
I don't see him as anything but a fullback. I don't love him at tight end. I think he needs to switch to fullback, and I think he could be a valuable fullback in the NFL. But aside from that, I don't think he has a future much at tight end.
No, and I'm not. I agree. I don't have as much confidence in any of these guys on the rest of this list.
There's a steep drop off.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
5th, I've gone Toolsy once again, and I've picked Jaheim Bell out of Florida State.
I thought you might.
Thought I might go who?
I thought you might go Bell.
Yeah, I another athlete, and I love athletes. That's about it. But a guy who, another interesting PFF stat, tight end yards after the catch versus forced missed tackles per reception is what we're looking at on the axes. This is among Power 5 tight ends over the past 8 years with a minimum of 75 receptions. So, second place in this entire thing with the most yards after catch per reception and the most missed tackles forced per reception is Brock Bowers. First place by a wide margin is Jaheim Bell. Just kind of an interesting stat. Yeah, so somebody who can force people to miss. He's very undersized at 6'2", 240, and was, didn't do anything at the combine, I don't believe, by choice. Or no, he did, I'm sorry. Ran a 4.6, which is slower than you'd like from 6'2", 240. But again, he's not anything overly dynamic. I just like him as a pass catcher and an overall, making people miss like that is fun. So I just have him at 5.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. No, I don't hate him. That's for sure. I think he was in an offense where he definitely got to shine, which was nice.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of like we said, it's just a steep drop off. I mean, none of these guys are going to be generational tight ends from what it seems.
No. So we can get into wide receivers. Let's have fun.
Oh, yeah.
This is the fun part.
That was quick.
Yeah, there's not much to say on any of those guys, unfortunately. This one we should definitely go 1 to 5 because I don't know if we'll disagree entirely on 4 and 5, but
we will.
You think so? Okay.
Yep.
I have Marvin Harrison Jr. at 1. I'm sure you do as well.
Yep.
It's maybe the best wide receiver ever to come out of college as a prospect. Him and Megatron and Julio and Larry Fitzgerald, who I've seen him get comped to all of them. I like the Julio comp a lot because they both have ridiculous body control, especially along the sideline. One that hit close to home for me was his catch against Indiana. I was trying hard to get the IU flag in the frame. Um, he had a catch along the right sideline where he, going out of bounds, wrapped his foot back along
Yep.
the sideline.
I
You know
remember
which one I'm
this one.
talking about. And like
Yep, I remember this one.
was in a squat position when his foot came down. And it was like,
Insane.
how the hell did he do that? You just, to be as big as he is, and he's not necessarily like weight wise the biggest, but obviously, ideal height from an X receiver, and as flexible and freaky athletic, rubbery really as he is very, very impressive. I just think he's, there's debate between wide receiver one right now. I don't know if he's head and shoulders above these other guys because they're so awesome as well, but he's number one for me.
Yeah, I think there's very little to be said for this so I'll keep it kind of short. I think the two things I'll say first, we talk about players and we talk about blue chip players, and there's obviously like how people say generational talents, whatever. So in the scouting world, there's a purple chip, someone who comes around once a decade at his position. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is the purple chip.
Yep.
I think he's the Calvin Johnson. For me, I would have to actually scout Calvin Johnson. Never did, but I watched him play football for years. He is Calvin Johnson, just a little smaller,
Yeah.
and that's it. And it's not a ton smaller, just a little bit. But that's the only thing is Calvin Johnson had the same speed, same great explosion, same great hand, everything. It's just he was a few inches taller as well. So then the second thing I'll say is my notes on him are as simple as can be. Great size, great speed, great physicality, great explosion.
Yep.
Great route running, tied in with great ball tracking. Like there's nothing, but there's nothing else. Like he is everything you can say. He is great.
Yep. He's incredible, and to think that he may fall to 5 in this class, like some people are rejecting, to me is ridiculous. I would take him at number 1 in a heartbeat if I didn't need a quarterback. I don't see a way that he is not good in the NFL. So
Yeah, I did just hear actually that Arizona is reaching out to trade out. Understandably, in the sense of they can get a haul, but crazy when you think that
Marvin may just fall into their
Marvin
lap.
Harrison might just fall to the Chargers.
Well, maybe they have similar grades on their number 2 receiver, who I have written down as Roma Dunze, and I wonder if you
Thank
do as
God.
well. Yep.
Absolutely.
So I hate ranking these next two in terms of one is better than the other because they are different
Agreed.
players.
Yep.
They play different roles, and they're both damn near the best possible outcome at their role. And Dunze is he's like Marvin Harrison Jr. light to me. Like he can do it all. He's especially good above the rim as a contested catch guy. Maybe better than Harrison above the rim. Can stride it out. Loves, like I said, the contested catch. Can play inside or outside. Is a better route runner than people give him credit for. Has a second gear once he gets out of his break. I think he is awesome and a bona fide X receiver.
Yeah, I agree. He's becoming another one of my draft darlings. I think there's one other guy in the wide receiver group that I would more consider my draft darling, but I love Roma Dunze. The easiest thing I've come to recognize is almost he's like a bigger Chris Olave.
I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. So he's got those excellent hands, impressive agility, great vertical ability above the rim. Like you said, is where he is cooking. I mean, that is where he excels. The only thing I really knock him on. So he can kind of be slow on the comeback routes.
Yeah.
But really, it's just the not a lot of yards after catch. Like his yak is pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
And we can sit here and say, it's just the routes he's running or the balls he's getting in their placement, but it is a little concerning the amount of yak he didn't get. Especially when his partner in this and that the one we're comparing him to has so much yards after contact
Right.
or yards after catch. So it's one of those things where it sticks out. We'll see how it plays out in the NFL. But I mean, yeah, this guy is he is incredible as a receiver.
Yeah, it's completely up to your flavor. If you want the outside guy, you take Rome. If you want the inside guy, you take Malik Neighbors, who, as you said, is easily far and away the most impressive yak threat in this class, probably in the last couple classes, um, maybe even more than couple. This guy is a freak with the ball in his hands. He's so fast. He is such a good route runner, and we've seen teams operate with wide receiver ones in the slot all the time. It's just, is that how you want to run your offense? Jamar Chase operates out of the slot. A.J. Brown is operated out of the slot. Amon-Ra St. Brown in Detroit, who's about to get a bag after this next year, is primarily a slot receiver. So there is a calling, Neighbors, oh, he can't be a wide receiver one because he's out of the slot. That doesn't make any sense at all. It is just how your offense is set up. And Neighbors is, like I said, with both of them, the ideal guy at the slot, and he's going to be taken very, very high in this draft. There's reason, I don't agree with it, that people say he's wide receiver one in the class, just because of like we said, the stereotypical archetype of a one is Harrison. But Neighbors has so much to like.
Yeah, I agree. There's so obviously he's 3, I think, for both of us, correct?
Yes, so yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think as much as we gush over Rome Odunze, and it's well warranted, it's the same for him, and that's why I liked how you said it's not great ranking these guys, just because Marvin Harrison is the clear number one. I don't think it's really hard to dispute that. The people that do, I think, are just looking for clicks, and it is what it is. But then you get Rome and Malik, who are just two completely different receivers, but are both equally as insane at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Rome is that phenomenal wide receiver that's going to catch the ball. He's going to wiggle himself open. He's going to catch contested ones. He's going to make it easy on your quarterback. Malik is going to make it easy on your quarterback by just dang out running everybody.
Yep.
He's going to be wide open every second of every play, as long as you understand what he's doing. For me, the most impressive thing for him is how he loses zero speed changing directions.
Yep.
He hits a change of direction and it doesn't bother a thing. It's crazy to watch. One thing, just because I've gotten to the point where I'm looking at so much of this, I'm putting comps on people, and I'm a rookie at this, so I don't know what I'm doing, but it's fun.
Yeah.
The guy that comes to mind the most, not as fast as Neighbors is Antonio Brown. A guy who would just lose zero speed moving from straight to left and then cutting back up the field, who was open whenever you looked down the field. Ben would throw the ball and it would be going to me like, no way, oh, wow, he's like 5 feet from the nearest defender and he's going to run this in for a touchdown. I think that's pretty much a faster Antonio Brown, which is kind of scary to say. But I think in the end, I mean, he could use some more nuance to his route running, but he doesn't need it because of his speed. So he fixes a lot of his deficits with speed, and you can hate that, but also you look at Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, guys who have been thriving off of speed in the NFL. This game is quickly turning that way.
Yep.
So I definitely think there's a lot to be given for Malik Neighbors.
And I think Antonio Brown's a good shout because of what I was talking about earlier. That was a wide receiver one who operated out of the slot. It can be done. It has been done before. Neighbors will more than likely do it. So I'm excited to see where he ends up. And especially if everybody's looking for creativity now, but if you can get that guy in motion and all these different things you could do with him, he's going.
Could you imagine him going to the Dolphins?
It would be insane. Don't even speak that. I don't know where I want him to end up though, honestly. I don't know the fit that I like the most. I do know that the Indianapolis Colts brought him in for a top 30 visit. That's all I know.
Y'all trading up to the 5?
If that's what it takes. Chris Ballard has never traded up in the first round ever, but
the first one's gonna be this big one.
I hope so. I hope. I think if you're ever gonna do it, it'd be for Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze. But
I mean, fair, yeah.
So my 4, and this is where you think we're going to start to disagree.
I would say if I had to bet 100% of the time, I would bet we are different.
I'm going to try to pick who you have here. I think you know who I have here.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not going to sit in silence for a long time. Do you have me having Brian Thomas Jr. at 4?
Yep.
You're correct. Ding, ding, ding. You win. It's his LSU teammate, Brian Thomas Jr., and he's awesome. I love Brian Thomas. He is the long strider, over the top, not super nuanced as a route runner. I don't think that they necessarily gave him the opportunities because they had Malik Neighbors that could operate so well underneath. So they saw this dude who's nearly 6'3", 210 pounds, who ran a 4.33 and plays like it, and just said, go over top all the time, and Jaden Daniels is going to throw you the football. And that's what he did, to the tune of leading the FBS in touchdowns. And I believe having a perfect passer rating on deep ball targets in college. So just ridiculous production over the top. It does profile as a limited route tree. I think he is a good enough athlete at the next level to overcome that. I also think that this is just what he is, and it's what he's going to be. He is an over-the-top game breaker. Whatever team gets him is going to use him like that. Also has the propensity to head tap you. If it's a contested catch situation, he can work back to the ball and get over top of you with his length. To me, he's like he'll come in as a Y, where he's not necessarily the true X, which is what some people are projecting him as. And I think it's fine to not project him as that. He can be the Y that isn't the first option, but can be on any given drive. Like, he can give you 3-4 catches and work you down the field. Kind of in the T. Higgins mold, right? Which is what Cincinnati does, where they have Jamar, but all of a sudden, number 5 is balling on the other side of the field this entire drive. And now we have to worry about both of them. And I think that's the kind of dynamic that Brian Thomas gives you. And bonus points for him a little bit because, like I said, while I was watching Thomas, I became lower on Daniels. So I just think he's an awesome player, and I think he projects really well.
Yeah, so, and that's why I knew you would have BTJ, and I like BTJ. I have come down a little bit on BTJ. Not specifically down on him, a little bit down on him. I studied his releases a little bit more. I heard some stuff, and so I went back and watched some more of his tape. Press coverage releases specifically, he didn't face many, but when he did, they did not go well. And that was his biggest critique. And then also just his releases in general were a little sluggish. He's a quick guy with good explosion, but it just didn't show in his release. So that it's not like it's not like he fell down the board or anything. It was enough to knock him down a little bit. And then I watched some more tape on my boy Ladd McConkey. And I'm really liking Ladd McConkey. And so he's my number 4.
Would it surprise you if I said he's my 5? Because he is.
It wouldn't surprise me at all. So I'm glad to hear that, honestly. Yeah. There's a lot about Ladd McConkey that I liked before I realized how fast he was. Mm-hmm. And then he blazed at the combine, and then I watched his tape, and you see it in the tape. His game speed matches his workout speed. And to combine that with what he was doing, with how great of a route runner he is, with his great quickness, acceleration, playing out of the slot, and great yak, this guy's going to be a great receiver at the NFL level. What terrifies me is somewhere he's being projected to go, which is Kansas City. And if he goes Kansas City, I am scared.
Yep.
Ladd McConkey, there is still that huge gap between the top 3 and Ladd McConkey. Don't get me wrong. But I do feel more comfortable in Ladd McConkey than I do in the next 3. So he's kind of just that separate tier for me. It's the top three, him, and then the next two. I don't think it's that big of a teardrop from him to the next two, but I do think there is a little bit of it. I think the main thing people were worried about is obviously his usage, and yeah, it sucks. He didn't have any crazy seasons or anything like that, but he was playing in a Georgia offense that doesn't really prioritize huge offensive air yards. They're going to grind out the games. I mean, they had Brock Bowers that's taken a lot of that looks anyway. So I love Lad McConkey. He's my wide receiver 4. So why don't you talk about a little bit as your wide receiver 5?
Yeah, he's my 5 for the same reasons. I think he's the best, even more so than maybe even the top 3. There is a case for him to be the best route runner in this class, the best separator, especially on out routes, where the dude just gets open. He can absolutely kill you. Quick feet, pretty sure-handed, and like you said, was the wide receiver 1 at Georgia this past year and the year before that on back-to-back, national championship runs. Obviously, didn't make it to the Final Four this year. There was some argument that they should have been there, but I mean, that offense was really him and Bowers, and then the run game. And in a funny way, they're pretty similar in terms of getting open and being this dynamic threat. I would love him in Carolina. I don't think there's as much a chance of that because they just traded for his NFL comp to me, which is Deontay Johnson. And I think a lot of people look at a white wide receiver and they won't say that. But he is that, shifty, that elusive. He is a true route technician. And I think if you can get open, you're going to be successful in the NFL. That's just how it is.
Yeah. No, I agree. I will back you on that route running thing. I think the one that really fights him on that is Rome.
Mm-hmm.
And even then I could see in a competition of going, hey, who's better? Lad, I think, might have that advantage, which is insane to say. For a wide receiver 4, that's insane.
So you said you have a tier of 2. Is it Brian Thomas and A.D. Mitchell?
It is.
Yeah.
Yep. And for me, to me, these two are like almost the same dang person. Both 21 and a half, both 6'4". The only difference, Adonai Mitchell's 196, BTJ's 205.
Yeah.
But they have the same play style. They have the same, to me, similar abilities. And so for me, it's one of those situations where I watched him all year. I know what he is. I don't have to. I think I watched maybe 1 or 2 specialized game films on him only.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew what he was coming in. That's why I was laughing real early off season when he's not even in the top 10 receivers for these guys. I'm like, y'all are really overlooking this dude. He is clutch. Yep. I think if I had to choose one word for him, that is the word I would choose, is clutch. When we needed a catch, when we needed someone to step up, when we needed someone to bring us some momentum, it was Adonai Mitchell who we went to. And we had another receiver and a tight end and a running back. It's not like we were devoid of guys, but Adonai Mitchell was just one of those dominating forces. You knew the ball was going to go to him in the crunch time. Kind of, like I said, he's very much like BTJ, so I won't go too deep into him. Just his fast, fluid, good footwork, and I love that he likes the nuance. So he gets deep into nuance on routes, which sometimes can get him into the sticks, but most times it works out for him. The only big thing, he has some false wasted steps in his release. So kind of like BTJ has trouble with the release.
Gets choppy.
Yeah, very, very choppy. And then he could do a lot better, like where Rome Odunze is great, is he attacks above the rim. Adonai Mitchell, not that great at that. He'll go get it, but it's not with a ferocity or anything. The fun thing, like I said, I've been doing some comps. To me, he comes off as like a T. Higgins for me.
Okay, so I have T. Higgins as Brian Thomas, and you have T. Higgins as A.D. Mitchell.
Exactly. Yeah. So I could see this guy being a wide receiver 1 on a team with not that great wide receivers, and it's okay. But in reality, he's going to be best as a wide receiver 2 with a prominent wide receiver 1 across from him that he can basically take up that that secondary role and be like, hey, I got it. I'll take some coverage away, or I'll attack the coverage that they're lacking because they're forcing it to you.
Yeah, he's in that next cluster. It's hard to rank this cluster of like 4 through 10 in this class. There's a lot of guys I like. Obviously, the comparison's being made to BTJ because I think I mentioned it on this pod before. The only individuals ever to be 6'2.5" or taller, 205 pounds or heavier, which I believe AD weighed in at 205 at the combine, uh, and run a sub 4.35 were Brian Thomas, Mitchell, and DK Metcalf, and that's it. That's the list. So they're always going to be kind of clumped together, and they're in that next tier after the top three. I think that even though they ran a very similar 40 time, Thomas looked much faster to me on tape than Mitchell. I don't think Mitchell really showed that 40 time. Uh, but Mitchell, to me, is the better route runner than Thomas. So it's like, choose your flavor, at least at this point. Uh, he's a hard eval for me because Texas ran the like half field read offense. And
Mm-hmm.
if his half of the field wasn't being read, he wasn't doing anything. He was just
Yeah.
out there, jogging around or standing there entirely. Like it was really hard to evaluate him. And I think that some people see that as effort issues, which maybe because even though the half of the field's being read, you'd rather act like both of them are being read. So maybe it's effort issues, but he does have that dog in him a little bit. In that uh, college football playoff when he said, "Give me the ball," and then
Mm-hmm.
went up, caught a touchdown the next play. Uh, he does have what you want in terms of X receiver skill set and size, speed. Um, it'll be about obviously there's some things he needs to fine tune. Good route runner, not elite. Um, but I think, and again, the long speed didn't look as fast to me as his 40 times said. But uh, he's a good player, and that, like I said, in this cluster of receivers, it's a lot of good players, and it all depends on where they end up.
Yeah. I think, and that's kind of where it is for me. Those top three, you can put them wherever you want. They're all elite, crazy. I would disagree with anyone that doesn't have Marvin Harrison one,
Yeah,
but it is what it is. Uh, and then the next three, I'm not going to argue. Like you having Brian Thomas Jr., then Ladd, then Adonai. I have no problem with that because it's similar to the top. I think Ladd's the best, but at the same point, I think there's an argument to be made for all three of them.
yeah,
It's so insane that there's just these two tiers that are just heads and shoulders above everyone.
yeah. I'm down to talk more receivers in this class because this whole cluster is just here. Like I said, I
Oh
think
yeah,
you could argue 4 through 10 in any order you want, and I don't think anybody can hate you for it.
no,
So the interesting thing when I watched Texas was like you said, when they needed a bucket, they went to Adonai. But I found that most of their offense was run through Xavier Worthy,
yep.
and I like Xavier Worthy a lot. Yeah, obviously ran the
Yeah, I
four
have
two
him
one.
at 7.
Obviously ran. I do. Yeah, I've got again it's all interchangeable down here, but the Texas boys typically together. Uh, I think Worthy is so obviously ran the 4.21 40, like I said, but is so dynamic with the ball in his hands. They used him in motion a lot, and he just torched teams. And he's doing that at Texas. It really excites me for what an NFL mind might put him up to. I think they could
Mm-hmm.
do ridiculous stuff with Xavier Worthy in the like a wishbone motion, coming out of the backfield, carrying the football, motion then up the seam, motion then a slant the other way. Like there's so much stuff you can do with him, and if you just get the ball in his hands, he will fly. I love Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, and that's why I have Xavier Worthy at 7 is just because he's he is a receiver that he may not be your wide receiver one. He
Mm.
may not be this crazy wide receiver that's gonna get open all the time. Whatever. He's a receiver though that if you don't account for him pre-snap,
You have to
you're
think
getting
about
scored on
him every snap. He is
every single
if
play.
he's out there, you almost have to shade his way because he'll just
Mm-hmm.
torch you over the top. There's just nothing you could do about it.
And that's the crazy thing is like it's so hard to go this receiver isn't perfect But at the same point, you have to scheme for him and you have to know where he is at all times. And that's crazy to say for a guy who could be a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 on a team. But to say that he has that talent, I mean, he has that talent. And the one thing I always say whenever I'm talking about Xavier Worthy, stop hating on him for his drops. He had a broken hand, still played. I'm so tired of that. That's everyone's. Oh, he had those drops. He had a broken hand, and he still played. Let's calm it down. He's playing with Quinn Ewers, who is overhyped, and that's where
Quinn Ewers stinks. I don't think he's very good at all.
Yeah, so I mean, he's working with what he's got. He had a broken hand. He had some drops. Get over it. He is so much better. He is a quick and fast dude. And I also think when he's playing, I think his playing weight is going to be like 180, 185.
Yeah.
From all I've heard, he went way low in his weight in order to break that record on the 40.
Yeah.
And obviously it worked for him, so I can't say anything for it. But from what I'm understanding, his operating weight was between 180 and 182.
Yeah, I wonder how similar this discourse was to the John Ross discourse. But, I didn't evaluate John Ross, but I know that Xavier Worthy is a better player than John Ross. I've convinced myself of that. Worthy he breaks tackles a lot. He is elusive with the ball in his hands. He's plays a lot stronger than his weight would tell you. And I think, obviously weight is going to be something to think about, but I really can see him as just an absolute game breaker, even at the next level, just like he was at Texas. There are a couple more names I have written down that we can hit briefly.
Yeah.
I don't care. I fell to my knees when I saw the 40 time, but I just can't quit Keon Coleman. I think he's awesome.
Oh.
I can't do it. I know there's the obviously this 40 time looked slow, plays a lot faster than it, and then there's the separation issues. But even more so than I talked about with Brian Thomas, I don't think they let him run a lot of dynamic routes at all at Florida State. At least I didn't in the games that I watched. And then he'll go up and just make circus catches when the ball's in the air. He was a basketball player at Michigan State and football player. Transferred to Florida State, returned punts at his size. He's elusive with the ball in his hands. He's, like I said, circus catches, ag catches. I can't quit him. There's something in me that won't. I don't know that he's going to be a good pro. I'm not going to stand on my sword and say that, but he's so fun. He's just fun.
Yeah, I think so. Just hearing that and everything I've done, for me, he seems like he's not this guy, but this is the play style, and there's a very common place. George Pickens. He is not gonna be open, but you can still throw it to him, and he's gonna make the
George
catch.
Pickens is a fine comp. I will take that if it's Keon Coleman.
And I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying that's what it reminds me of and that's the reason I hate Pickens. I don't like receivers who can't get open.
Yeah.
If you can't get open, in my mind, you're a bad receiver. You aren't doing it right. But Keon Coleman, George Pickens, they both make their living off of they're not open, but they're open.
Yeah, right.
So just throw it up, and they're going to somehow make it. And does it get intercepted every once in a while? Yeah. Do they make an insane catch? Yeah. Does most times it end up incomplete? Probably. But in the same sense, that they're better than normal at making a contested catch, which I'll give it to him. He's my wide receiver 12. I do not like Keon Coleman.
Yeah.
And that's it's not that I hate him. I mean, 12 seems bad, but in this class, it's really not. For me, he's a wide receiver 3, gadget wide receiver on an NFL team that just is there because they need a big body that can catch a contested catch.
I'm not projecting him to be a wide receiver 1 or even a wide receiver 2. Another guy like I talked about with who else did I talk about as just being fun to watch? I mentioned a couple in this class before. Audric Estime was one of them. Just a fun evaluation. I can't quit him. I was high on him early in the season and became lower on him, but he's still just there in the back of my mind as
for sure.
He can be something.
So then So then with that, I'm gonna point out a guy I love in Florida wide receiver Ricky
Pretty
Pearsall.
Ricky, baby. Slick Rick. I love Ricky Pearsall.
Oh
I
my
think he's
gosh,
awesome.
this dude hits my heartstrings because of the fact of I grew up loving Tom Brady and watching those Patriots and having fun with that, even as a Texans fan, when they knocked us out of the playoffs a couple times. But anyway, I loved watching them, and this guy, I cannot see a different comp than Julian Edelman for him. The size matches up, and then his style. He knows how to trick a defender and do little feints to make them give him space while he's running a quick route. So he gets that space on a quick route, can catch that ball, and still has space to go. He's quick off the line. He's an incredibly tough receiver. I mean, and I've just watched his tape recently, which is what's funny. I wasn't. I heard some hype on him, but I didn't think anything of it. But putting him at 8, I watched his film and I was just like, dude, this is like Julian Edelman all over again. This is fantastic. This is a guy who's gonna do whatever you say and do it with a smile, and he's gonna get concussed and tell a teammate, hey, what's the day, time, and month so that I know what I can say to this neurologist. That way I don't have to sit out. Like, that's the type of guy this dude is, and I love it. I can't wait to watch him on whatever team he gets. I think he's going to be a real weapon in the slot for them.
So obviously, I became familiar with Ricky Pearsall. He was at Arizona State before, and then transferred to Florida. And the tape from Florida last year with Anthony Richardson is hilarious because he is the only guy that gets open on that Florida offense. He jumped right off the film for me. So he's been on my radar for a couple years. And it's for all the reasons that you say. He is a route technician, not as good as like a McConkey, but he's got ridiculously quick feet. He also had the best catch in college football this past year. The one like backhand, one-handed while he got crunched between two defensive backs. He's awesome. He's also currently, I saw a video today, training with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill in Miami. So,
oh, that's awesome.
yeah, he's fun. Another couple guys I like. I like Jalen Polk from Washington. I think people overlook him a little bit because Odunze is so good, but I think he's a potential top 50 guy. Penix relied on him. Just a good player, good solid football player. And then the last one I want to mention and talk about is South Carolina Xavier Legette, who is in the archetype of like a Debo or an A.J. Brown type build, where a little bit shorter, a little bit stockier than the normal receiver. And people are low on Legette because this was the breakout year. But there were reasons for it. I don't know if you'd heard his whole backstory. I believe when he was a sophomore at South Carolina, both of his parents passed away in a car accident. So that pretty obviously working against him as a young man, not only trying to become a better football player, but just become a better man as he grew into adulthood, losing both his parents. And then all throughout, even up to his senior year, he didn't play. Had guys ahead of him, wasn't really given a shot. Got a shot in the bowl game at the end of his senior year and dominated for South Carolina. And then obviously this past year got the opportunity and balled out. Was fantastic, super fast for his size, good hands. Another guy who can play above the rim, though he is a little bit shorter. Physical with the ball in his hands, is not afraid of contact at all. Doesn't necessarily look to make you miss, looks to go right through you. He is a very, very fun evaluation. Somebody who's been through a lot and was noted by South Carolina's coaches in interviews as a workhorse in the gym. Obviously, in the transfer portal era, could have transferred, decided at South Carolina and earned his way and is reaping the benefit now. And I'm excited to see him continue to be good in the NFL.
Yeah, no, I like him. There's definitely, I didn't know all that about him, so that's really good to know. I've heard the hype on him growing over the past couple of days, or past couple of weeks, really. I didn't see anything crazy to love.
Really?
But I didn't see anything to hate either.
Right.
So I mean, I'm kind of neutral on him, unlike some of these other guys, which isn't a bad thing, but it's just not something I've noticed that I've been like, oh yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah.
With all that being said, the one guy I'll mention aside from Luke McCaffrey, just saying
Yeah.
that he's McCaffrey. He's gonna be a fucking baller.
Sure.
I can't wait.
They're 2 for 2 so far. So
Yeah, I can't wait. So, but aside from him, who's kind of like one of my favorites, Jacob Cowing from Arizona
Yep.
is a guy who I thought it was funny. Someone comped him to Tank Dell. I very much disagree with that.
Yeah.
But I can see why they did. If you don't pay attention to how Tank Dell wins and what Tank Dell does and just think of he's a small receiver out of the slot that gains success, sure. Yeah, I guess you want to comp him to that, sure. That's not what Tank Dell does, but it is what it is. With Jacob Cowing, I mean, his acceleration plus his size is pretty good. He's still 5'11". He's not like the biggest receiver, but he's not Tank Dell size. He's a gifted route runner.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if creating separation is the name of the game, he's won. He's great at creating separation. He's got really good yards after catch. He doesn't have much strength is his main thing, I would say, against him. But with the amount of separation he can get, he is one of those guys that I think is going to be in the realm of how people talk about Tank Dell next year. He's going to go third, fourth round bet at best, and people are going to, at the end of the year, they're going to be like, man, Jacob Cowing, he shouldn't have fallen that far, at least in my opinion. I think creating, kind of like what I've said with Keon Coleman, I think a wide receiver's job is to create separation, whether that be through speed or route running. This guy creates separation. So for me, he's a great wide receiver. There's a lot I still have to decide in all these rankings, but man, do I love Jacob Cowing and his projection going forward in this draft class.
Yeah, so many good ones. We didn't even talk about Roman Wilson or Javon Baker or Tez Walker. I mean, so many good receivers that a lot of these receiver needy teams in the top maybe opt to go a different position because they're comfortable with who they can get. And round 2, round 3.
There was a reason I didn't talk about Tez Walker.
I don't love Tez Walker either, but there's throwing out the names that people like out there.
For sure.
The other Washington receiver, Jalen McMillan, Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky, who gets a lot of Debo comps, Troy Franklin, who we didn't talk about, who I'm not necessarily high on. But
I was going to ask you how you felt about him because I am kind of undecided. I don't really love him.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm pretty indifferent. Kind of the same thing with a long strider, long speed, just isn't really impressive to me anywhere else. So I think that a team will covet the speed, but people talking about him at the end of first round, I can't get behind that.
That makes Bo Nix look a lot better.
Well, throwing to him on all the underneath routes, he was able to burst through and make some plays. But we are a little over 2 hours here with our first top 5s everywhere. So this I anticipated being the longest out of any of them. This was certainly the group, the skill positions, there would be more debate, I think, than anywhere else. There's going to be some debate, maybe with the edge rushers and stuff, but this is where the strength of the draft is, in my opinion, these skill positions and then corner. Just a lot of guys who can be really, really impactful. Like I said, 2 weeks away from the draft. I am so excited to see where all of them end up. I think that we say this every year, but this draft is very highly anticipated. Obviously last year I was excited because we were getting a quarterback. This year I think I'm more excited just to see how this board falls. I'm pumped.
Oh yeah, I'll be speeding home.
Oh, you work that day?
I work Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so I will be speeding home from work when I get off at 5 to try and make it.
Brutal. Yeah, I'm so pumped, and I will be every pick I'll pretty much be watching the live coverage of. But
100%.
We'll finish up before that draft all of our top 5s. This wraps up this one. You have anything else you want to say?
No.
All right. We're good then.